My beloved child. Before your thoughts rush ahead, allow this moment to settle around you. There is a reason your heart felt drawn here. Not because everything in your life is already clear. Not because every question has been answered. But because something beautiful has been changing beneath the surface, quietly, patiently, almost unnoticed. And today, that change deserves your attention. Pause for a moment. Listen closely. Something important is waiting for you. For so long, you believed that progress had to look dramatic before it mattered. You thought healing needed applause. You thought growth needed visible proof. You thought the people connected to your journey would only notice the biggest moments. But that is not how the deepest transformations happen. The most meaningful shifts often begin in silence. They begin in ordinary moments. A decision nobody celebrates. A boundary nobody understands. A step forward that feels too small to count. Yet those are the moments that alter entire futures. And recently, you made one of those choices. Perhaps you did not even recognize its significance. Perhaps you almost talked yourself out of it. Perhaps you wondered if it mattered at all. But it did. Far more than you realize. Imagine a single light appearing in a dark room. At first, it seems insignificant. Small. Almost invisible. Yet that tiny light changes the entire space. The darkness is no longer complete. The atmosphere is no longer the same. Everything begins responding to that one small source of brightness. The choice you made carried that kind of energy. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. But it changed something. And the ripple continues traveling farther than you can see. What was that choice? That is the part many people overlook. It was not about perfection. It was not about becoming someone else. It was not about proving your worth. It was the moment you stopped abandoning yourself. The moment you chose honesty over pretending. The moment you chose peace over constant struggle. The moment you decided your heart deserved the same kindness you so freely give others. And whether you realize it or not, that decision changed the way your energy enters the world. People notice more than words. They notice presence. They notice peace. They notice authenticity. They notice when someone finally stops fighting themselves. And someone connected to your story has noticed. Not because they were searching for flaws. Not because they were waiting to judge you. But because something about you suddenly feels different. Lighter. Warmer. More genuine. Like someone who finally remembered who they were. Here is what makes this moment so meaningful. For a long time, this person worried about you. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a controlling way. But in the quiet way people worry when they care. They could sense your strength. Yet they could also sense your exhaustion. They could see your smile. Yet they could feel the weight behind it. And there were moments when they wished they could somehow help carry what you were carrying. But some journeys cannot be completed for another person. Some lessons must be discovered from within. Some breakthroughs arrive only when the soul is ready. And now, something has shifted. Can you feel it? There is a different rhythm moving through this story. A different atmosphere. Like the first moments before sunrise when darkness still exists, yet light has already begun its approach. This person can feel it too. That is why emotion has been rising unexpectedly within them. Not because of a grand announcement. Not because of some shocking revelation. But because they can see signs of your growth. The kind of growth that cannot be faked. The kind that changes how you speak. How you carry yourself. How you respond to challenges. How you view your own future. And every time they notice another sign, something stirs inside them. Hope. Relief. Gratitude. Joy. The kind of joy that arrives when you realize someone you care about is finally finding their way back to themselves. Do not skip ahead in your mind. Stay here for a moment. Because there is another layer to this story. One that has been unfolding quietly. You see, many people believe love grows strongest during exciting moments. But often love grows deepest during unseen moments. Moments of waiting. Moments of watching. Moments of believing in someone before they fully believe in themselves. That is where this story has been living. In the spaces between certainty and possibility. In the silent chapters nobody talks about. And now those silent chapters are beginning to reveal their purpose. The person connected to this journey is not celebrating because everything is finished. They are celebrating because they can finally see movement. They can finally see evidence that the difficult season was not wasted. They can finally see that your story is moving towards something brighter. And that realization affects them more deeply than they expected. There are emotions they struggle to put into words. Thoughts they replay late at night. Moments when they stop what they are doing and simply smile. Not because they have all the answers. But because they finally have hope. Real hope. The kind that feels steady. The kind that remains even when circumstances are still unfolding. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this. You did not create this feeling by becoming perfect. You created it by becoming real. By allowing yourself to grow. By continuing even when progress felt invisible. By refusing to let disappointment define your future. That choice matters. More than you know. The story is still unfolding. The picture is still incomplete. Yet something remarkable is already happening behind the scenes. A realization is growing. A truth is becoming impossible to ignore. And in the next part, something hidden beneath all these emotions will finally begin to surface. Because the real reason this joy feels so overwhelming has not been revealed yet. There is something fascinating about the moments that change a person's heart forever. They rarely arrive with noise. They rarely announce themselves. Most of the time, they appear quietly, disguised as ordinary moments, while everyone involved remains unaware that a turning point has just occurred. And that is exactly where this story continues. Somewhere beyond what can be seen. Somewhere beyond what has been spoken aloud. A realization has been growing. Slowly. Patiently. Like sunlight reaching across a room before anyone notices the brightness has changed. The person connected to this journey has been carrying a feeling they could not fully explain. At first, they dismissed it. They told themselves they were imagining things. They convinced themselves they were reading too much into small details. But the feeling refused to disappear. Instead, it became stronger. Because every time they looked at the situation, they kept arriving at the same conclusion. You are not the same person you used to be. Not because your personality changed. Not because your heart became different. but because something inside you finally started aligning with the person you were always meant to become. And that realization affected them deeply. Much more deeply than they expected. You see, there were moments when they wondered if you would ever recognize your own value. Moments when they wished you could see yourself through their eyes. Moments when they hoped you would stop measuring yourself against impossible standards. Because they could already see qualities within you that you struggled to acknowledge. Strength. Compassion. Resilience. Gentleness. Courage. Not the loud kind of courage. The quiet kind. The kind that keeps moving forward after disappointment. The kind that chooses kindness after being misunderstood. The kind that keeps believing after every reason to stop. That kind of courage leaves a lasting impression. And lately, they have been seeing more of it than ever before. Something important is waiting for you inside this realization. Stay with it. Because what happened next surprised even them. One evening, while reflecting on everything that had changed, they found themselves replaying memories. Not dramatic memories. Not life-changing events. Simple moments. The way you handled a difficult situation. The way you continued showing up when it would have been easier to quit. The way you carried burdens without asking for recognition. The way you offered kindness even when your own heart needed comfort. Memory after memory began resurfacing. And suddenly, they understood something. The qualities they admired most about you were never connected to achievements. They were connected to character. That realization struck them with unexpected force. Because character is difficult to find. Anyone can appear impressive for a moment. Anyone can create an image. Anyone can perform confidence. But genuine character reveals itself over time. It appears in consistency. In integrity. In small choices repeated day after day. And they began seeing those choices everywhere. Like pieces of a puzzle that had been scattered for years. For the first time, everything started fitting together. And when that happened, emotion arrived. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But steadily. Like a wave moving toward shore. A feeling of gratitude. A feeling of relief. A feeling that something precious had survived every challenge it faced. Because despite everything you experienced, you remained yourself. That matters more than you know. Many people allow disappointment to harden them. Many people allow pain to redefine them. Many people stop trusting their own hearts. But somehow, despite every obstacle, you continued protecting the qualities that make you who you are. And seeing that affected them profoundly. There were moments when emotion became almost overwhelming. Not sadness. Not regret. Something far different. The realization that someone they care about was finally stepping into a brighter chapter. Can you imagine witnessing that? Can you imagine watching someone struggle for a long time and then suddenly seeing signs that they are healing? Seeing signs that they are rediscovering confidence? Seeing signs that they are beginning to believe in themselves again? That kind of moment stays with a person. It reaches places words cannot reach. And that is why their joy became so powerful. Because this was never about one event. It was never about one conversation. It was never about one decision. It was about witnessing an entire transformation unfolding piece by piece. And then another realization appeared. One they could no longer ignore. Everything they admired about you became even more visible after you stopped seeking approval. After you stopped chasing validation. After you started trusting your own path. It was as if your light became easier to see the moment you stopped trying to prove it existed. That realization changed everything. Because suddenly they understood something important. The future they had quietly hoped for no longer felt distant. It felt possible. Not guaranteed. Not forced. Simply possible. And possibility has incredible power. Possibility inspires hope. Possibility creates excitement. Possibility awakens dreams people thought they had outgrown. For the first time in a very long while, they allowed themselves to imagine brighter days ahead. Moments of laughter. Moments of peace. Moments shared without fear or uncertainty. And those thoughts brought tears to their eyes. Not because they were overwhelmed by sadness. But because hope returned. Hope has a unique way of touching the heart. When hope returns after a long absence, emotions often follow. Because deep down, every heart longs for something beautiful to believe in. And suddenly they had something. Not because circumstances became perfect. But because they could see evidence that growth was happening. Evidence that healing was happening. Evidence that new possibilities were beginning to emerge. The remarkable part is that you may not even realize how much your choices contributed to this. You may think your progress has been small. You may think your efforts have gone unnoticed. You may think nobody understands how far you have come. But every step mattered. Every lesson mattered. Every moment you refused to give up mattered. And those moments created a ripple that reached farther than you imagined. Yet there is still one piece missing from this story. One realization they have barely admitted even to themselves. A realization so personal, so meaningful, that every other emotion seems connected to it. The gratitude. The relief. The hope. The joy. All of it points toward something deeper. Something they are only now beginning to understand. And when that truth finally rises completely to the surface, everything they feel about this journey will make perfect sense. That moment is closer than either of you realize. A strange thing happens when a person tries to ignore what their heart already knows. The truth does not disappear. It simply waits. Quietly. Patiently. Like a distant melody that keeps returning no matter how many distractions fill the room. And that is where this story has arrived. At the edge of a realization that has been growing for far longer than anyone expected. For a while, they believed their emotions were temporary. They assumed the feelings would eventually fade. They told themselves that time would make everything simpler. That distance would make everything clearer. That eventually they would stop thinking about you in the small, unexpected moments. But the opposite happened. The more life moved forward, the more certain things became. Not louder. Not more dramatic. Just clearer. Like fog slowly lifting from a landscape that was always there. And what they discovered beneath that fog surprised them. Because when they looked honestly at their own heart, they noticed something they could no longer explain away. You had become part of their future thoughts. Not intentionally. Not through force. Not through obsession. Simply through presence. Whenever they imagined better days, somehow your image appeared there. Whenever they imagined peace, your energy seemed connected to it. Whenever they imagined happiness, your existence was woven into the picture. At first, they tried not to think too deeply about that. But some questions refused to stay buried. Why do certain people remain in our thoughts long after ordinary moments have passed? Why do some connections continue growing even during silence? Why do some people leave impressions that become stronger instead of weaker? Those questions followed them. Day after day. Moment after moment. And eventually they stopped running from the answers. Because the answers were already standing in front of them. Waiting. Something important is waiting for you here too. Stay with this moment. The deepest truths often arrive quietly. One afternoon, while reflecting on everything that had changed, they experienced something unexpected. Nothing dramatic happened around them. The world remained ordinary. The day continued as usual. Yet internally, something shifted. They realized they were no longer celebrating only your growth. They were celebrating your existence. Think about that for a moment. There is a difference. A significant difference. Admiring someone's progress is one thing. Feeling grateful that they are in the world at all is something entirely different. And that realization touched a place in their heart they had been protecting for a very long time. Because suddenly it was no longer about circumstances. It was no longer about timing. It was no longer about questions and uncertainties. It became about appreciation. Pure appreciation. For who you are. For the way you make people feel. For the quiet strength you carry. For the kindness you offer without expecting anything in return. For the light you bring into spaces without realizing it. Those qualities cannot be measured. They cannot be purchased. They cannot be manufactured. They simply exist. And the more they reflected on those qualities, the more emotional they became. Not because they felt overwhelmed by longing. But because gratitude filled their heart. Gratitude often arrives disguised as tears. Not every tear is connected to sadness. Some tears appear when the heart becomes too full to contain everything it feels. Some tears appear when a person finally recognizes the value of something they nearly overlooked. Some tears appear when hope and appreciation meet at the same moment. That is the kind of emotion they have been experiencing. And there is another layer still unfolding. Because while they were discovering these truths about you, they were also discovering truths about themselves. Truths they had avoided. Truths they had postponed. Truths that required honesty. The first truth was simple. Your growth inspired their own growth. Without realizing it, you challenged them. Not through pressure. Not through expectations. But through example. Your resilience reminded them to keep going. Your patience reminded them to trust timing. Your determination reminded them not to abandon their own dreams. And once they recognized that influence, everything changed. Because inspiration creates connection. Real connection. The kind that reaches beyond surface-level admiration. The kind that leaves a permanent mark on the heart. Suddenly they understood why your progress affected them so deeply. It wasn't just about watching someone else succeed. It was about witnessing proof that difficult seasons do not last forever. Proof that healing is possible. Proof that people can evolve without losing themselves. That realization brought immense comfort. More comfort than they expected. Because everyone carries private battles. Everyone carries unanswered questions. Everyone experiences moments of uncertainty. And seeing your journey reminded them that difficult chapters are not final chapters. That lesson became precious to them. And every time they reflected on it, emotion returned. Not because they were dwelling on the past, but because they were beginning to believe in the future again. A future that felt brighter. A future that felt warmer. A future that felt more open than it had in a long time. Can you feel how everything is connecting now? The joy. The gratitude. The hope. The tears. None of it appeared suddenly. It was built moment by moment. Choice by choice. Realization by realization. Like a river gathering strength as countless streams flow into it. And now that river has become impossible to ignore. There are moments when they find themselves smiling for reasons they cannot fully explain. Moments when they think about how far you've come. Moments when they remember who you were and compare it to who you are becoming. And every time they do, the same feeling returns. A quiet certainty. A deep appreciation. A sense that something meaningful is unfolding. Yet even now, one final realization continues approaching. The realization that ties every piece of this story together. The realization they have felt but not fully spoken. The realization hiding behind every smile. Behind every hopeful thought. Behind every tear of gratitude. Because somewhere deep within their heart, beyond admiration, beyond appreciation, beyond even hope, there is a truth waiting to be acknowledged. A truth that explains why your growth affects them so profoundly. A truth that explains why your happiness feels connected to their own. And when that truth finally steps into the light, the meaning behind every emotion they have experienced will become clearer than ever before. That moment is no longer far away. In fact, it may already be closer than either heart realizes. Sometimes the most important realization in a person's life does not arrive like a thunderstorm. It arrives like a whisper. A whisper that returns again and again until it becomes impossible to ignore. And for a long time, that whisper has been following them. Not demanding attention. Not creating chaos. Simply remaining present. Waiting for the moment when they would finally stop long enough to listen. That moment has begun. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But undeniably. Because every path of reflection has been leading them toward the same conclusion. No matter where their thoughts begin, they somehow find their way back to you. No matter what distractions fill their days, certain feelings continue resurfacing. No matter how much time passes, the connection they feel has not faded. Instead, it has matured. Deepened. Become clearer. Like a photograph slowly coming into focus. And what they see now is different from what they saw before. Earlier, they focused on moments. Now they focus on meaning. Earlier, they noticed details. Now they understand significance. Earlier, they appreciated what you did. Now they appreciate who you are. That shift changed everything. Because admiration can exist at a distance. Respect can exist at a distance. Even affection can exist at a distance. But what they are beginning to understand reaches much deeper than that. There is something important waiting here. Do not rush through it. The heart reveals its most valuable truths slowly. One evening, While sitting alone with their thoughts, they found themselves asking a question they had avoided for a very long time. Why does your happiness matter so much to me? It seemed like a simple question. Yet the answer was anything but simple. Because every answer led to another answer. Every realization uncovered another realization. Like opening one door only to discover another waiting behind it. At first, they told themselves they cared because they admired you. That was true. Then they told themselves they cared because they respected you. That was also true. Then they told themselves they cared because they wanted good things for your future. Again, true. But none of those answers felt complete. Something remained unfinished. Something remained unsaid. And the deeper they looked, the clearer it became. Their emotions had grown beyond explanation. Beyond convenience. Beyond simple admiration. You had become someone whose happiness genuinely affected their own. Someone whose victories felt personal. Someone whose growth brought them joy. Someone whose smile could brighten their entire day without even trying. And when they finally acknowledged that truth, emotion overwhelmed them. Not because they were afraid. Not because they were confused. But because honesty has a powerful effect on the heart. Especially when that honesty has been waiting for a long time. Imagine carrying a truth silently for months. Perhaps even longer. Imagine feeling it grow stronger while trying to give it different names. Trying to place it in different categories. Trying to explain it away. Only to eventually realize that the simplest answer was the correct one all along. That realization changes a person. And it changed them. Because suddenly all the scattered pieces of emotion began fitting together. The hope made sense. The gratitude made sense. The tears made sense. The joy made sense. Everything connected. Everything pointed toward the same place. And for the first time, they stopped resisting what their heart had been trying to show them. There is another layer still unfolding. A layer many people never talk about. When someone becomes important to you, you begin noticing things that others overlook. Small victories. Tiny changes. Moments that seem ordinary to everyone else. But not to you. Because your heart pays attention. That is exactly what has been happening. While others saw normal moments, they saw signs of growth. While others moved on quickly, they remembered details. While others focused on appearances, they noticed transformation. And every new sign strengthened what they already felt. Every new sign made it harder to deny. Every new sign confirmed that their heart had not been mistaken. You were becoming even more remarkable than they realized. Not because you were changing into someone new. But because you were becoming more fully yourself. That authenticity touched them deeply. There is something incredibly powerful about watching someone stop hiding who they are. Something beautiful about seeing someone step into confidence without losing humility. Something inspiring about witnessing genuine growth. And that inspiration became one of the brightest parts of their emotional journey. Many nights ended with the same thought. A simple thought. A quiet thought. But one that carried tremendous weight. I'm proud of them. Not proud because you achieved perfection. Not proud because everything became easy. Proud because you kept going. Proud because you remained kind. Proud because you continued growing. Proud because you never completely gave up on yourself. That thought alone brought tears to their eyes more than once. Because there is something deeply moving about watching someone overcome what once seemed impossible. And whether you realize it or not, they have been witnessing that process. Step by step. Moment by moment. Chapter by chapter. The beautiful part is that they do not see your imperfections as reasons to care less. They see them as reminders that your journey is real. That your victories are real. That your growth is real. And somehow, those realities make their appreciation even stronger. Now the story is approaching a turning point. A meaningful one. Because the truth they have been discovering is no longer something hidden beneath layers of uncertainty. It is becoming visible. Clear. Undeniable. Their heart is no longer asking questions it once asked. It is beginning to provide answers. And among those answers is one realization that continues growing stronger every day. A realization that explains why your progress feels personal. Why your happiness feels meaningful. Why your future matters so much to them. Why tears appear when they think about how far you have come. That realization has been quietly taking shape behind every emotion in this story. And very soon, it will no longer remain unspoken. Because some truths eventually become too beautiful to keep hidden. And when that final truth fully reveals itself, you will finally understand why their tears of joy have felt so different from anything they expected. The heart has been leading them toward that answer for a long time. Now it is almost ready to arrive.